Hare Krishna. So today we have our 19th session, right? Session number 19. And today we will see three chapters of the third canto, chapter 3, 4, and 5. And the main topic for today is the creation of the material elements that we have on the fifth chapter of the third canto. That is an explanation that appears to be very complicated at first, but actually, it follows a certain logic and it's quite interesting actually. So in chapter 3.2, right, Uddhava, he begins this description of Krishna's pastimes, and he started with his childhood pastimes, and then he continues into the pastime of lifting Govardhan Hill, Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, and now he continues with, on the third chapter, he continues with Krishna's pastimes out of Vrindavan, right? So let me put this slide here. Yes. So Krishna went to Mathura, right? He killed Kansa. He saved his parents, Vasudeva and Devaki, who Kansa was imprisoning. And Kansa was so powerful that even the demigods were afraid of him, right? But Krishna, he killed him without any difficulty. So Krishna exterminated, all his demoniac allies in Vrindavan, and then in Mathura, Kansa was the last one. And then when Krishna was in Gokula, he played not in Gokula, in the Gurukula, he played the role of a perfect student, and he was very obedient to his teacher, right, Sandipani Muni, and he learned the Vedas just by hearing the Vedas one time. He learned everything, and then after finishing his studies, he rewarded his teacher by bringing his dead son back to life, and that's another miracle, right? Because of course Krishna he knows everything, he's all powerful, but he plays these pastimes to teach us about the necessity of learning from the spiritual master, and as far as possible rewarding him for his efforts, in trying to teach us. Right? And then Krishna also married Rukmini, right, by saving her when her brother wanted to marry her to Sisupala. And also he married seven other princesses, like including Satyabhama, Jambavati, Kalindi, and so on, also by doing many heroic deeds. And then he fought with the demigods to bring the Parijata tree from heaven to adorn the palaces of these different queens. And then later, the Lord fought with Narakasura, and he freed these 16,100 princesses that were kidnapped by him. And these princesses, however, they were not interested in going home. Right? They begged the Lord to marry them all, and the Lord agreed, right? And he expanded himself in 16,100 100 forms, and he built one big palace to each princess, and he married them in perfect, marriage ceremonies. He begot 10 children and one daughter with each queen, and then each one of these sons, he had 10 sons. So this created a huge dynasty, right? Starting from Krishna. And one of the reasons Krishna comes to our planet is to relieve the burden of the world, right? When the earth becomes overburned by, millions of the demons from all over the universe who take birth here. So Krishna killed, the associates of Kansa who were attacking him in Vrindavan. Also, he killed the millions of demoniac soldiers brought by Jarasandha as he went to attack Mathura, right? Jarasandha, he was doing some very useful service to the Lord, right? He was bringing out these demons at Krishna's doorstep, so Krishna could very conveniently kill all of them, right? And he also arranged for the killing of many other great demons, such as Kalyavana, Sambara, Divivida, Bana, Mura, Balvala, Dantavakra, Sisupala. Some of them Krishna killed himself, and others Krishna organized, so different of his devotees would kill. And then Krishna organized things in a way that all the remaining demons, they will join him in the battle of Kurukshetra, so they could be killed by the Pandavas and other great devotees, right, fulfilling completely his mission of exterminating the demons. And then after the conclusion of the battle of Kurukshetra, the Lord saved Parikshit when he was attacked in the womb by Aswatthama, right? And this is narrated in the first canto. And after the Pandavas were installed on the throne, the Lord instructed Yudhishthira Maharaja to execute 3 horse sacrifices. And then, after that, the Lord returned to Dwarka, where he performed, many other pastimes, right? And the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's centered in the pastimes that happened before the battle of Kurukshetra. So, for example, the last pastimes that are narrated in the 10th canto, such as Draupadi meeting the queens of Krishna, Arjuna kidnapping Subhadra, they happened many years before the battle of Kurukshetra. So, for example, by the time of the battle of Kurukshetra, Arjuna and Subhadra, they already had a 16-year-old son, Abhimanyu. So this means that Arjuna kidnapping Subhadra happened like 17 years before the battle, at least, right? So there are also a few pastimes that happened after the battle, and these are all narrated in the first canto, right? So, and then in the 11th canto, there is the description of the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty, right? Which happened 36 years after the battle. And this important pastime is also described by Uddhava to Vidura. And so I'm quoting here. This is verses 14 and 15 from the 3rd chapter. Quote, after the end of the battle of Kurukshetra, the Lord said, the abatement of the art's great burden, 18 Akshauhinis, has now been effected with the help of Drona, Bhishma, Arjuna, and Bhima. But what is this? There is still the great strength of the Yadu dynasty, born of myself, which may be a more unbearable burden. When they quarrel amongst themselves, influenced by intoxication, with their eyes red like copper because of drinking madhu, then only will they disappear. Otherwise, it will not be possible. On my disappearance, this incident will take place, right? So then we have the next topic that is on the chapter 3.4, that is the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty, right? How the dynasty of Krishna can disappear from the planet. And of course, we already heard a lot about that in the first canto, but here Uddhava is narrating it, so let's see what Uddhava teaches us about that. So, it was not possible for the Lord to leave the planet and leave behind all his associates, right? It was just not possible. The eternal associates of the Lord, they had to go with him to the next universe, and the demigods who had taken birth to join his pastimes, they had to go back to the celestial planets to continue their duties, right? So everyone had a service to do. So the pastime of the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty started with a few of the princes of the Yadu dynasty visiting a group of sages led by Narada Muni to play a practical joke. They dressed Samba as a woman and they put a false belly under the sari, and they asked the sages if the lady was pregnant with a boy or a girl, right? They made this joke, this offense to the sages. And inspired by the Lord, the sages, they became very angry. And they answered, fools, she will bear you an iron club that will destroy your entire dynasty, right? So that was the answer of the sages, a curse. And when they checked under the clothes, they saw that the false belly that they put there, it had indeed transformed into an iron club. So So they went back to Dwarka, they presented it to the seniors, and they decided to ground it, now make it into powder and throw this powder into the ocean, right? But so the idea was to destroy the club, make it disappear. But this powder, it was washed back to the shore, and it was deposited into a grove of bamboos that was growing there. And as a result, these bamboos, they became like metal. They became like iron rods, very, very hard. And later, these bamboos, they were used as weapons by the Yadus when they fought, among themselves, and putting an end to the dynasty, right? So they were used like weapons. And as explained by Uddhava, only the Yadus who were incarnations of demigods, they participated in these pastimes. The ones who were as eternal associates, they remained in Dwarka and then they followed the Lord to the next universe, right, where he was going to perform his pastimes. And that is a description of that. This is verses 24 and 25 of the third chapter. Quote, um, once upon a time, great sages were made angry by the sporting activities of the princely descendants of the Yadu and Bhoja dynasty, and thus, as desired by the Lord, the sages cursed them. Few months passed, and then, bewildered by Krishna, all the descendants of the Vrishni, Bhoja, and Andaka, who were incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhasha, while those who were eternal devotees of the Lord did not leave but remained in Dwarka, unquote. So the pastime of the Yadus fighting, right, putting an end to the dynasty, it is also described by Uddhava. So a few months after the course, right, after the curse, the Yadus who were incarnations of demigods, they left Dwarka, right, with the purpose of executing a sacrifice, and being kshatras, they were allowed to drink on certain occasions, like after a sacrifice. But in this case, this drinking triggered the fulfillment of the course, right? Leading to the end of the dynasty. So, quote, that's on the fourth chapter now, verses 1 and 2. Thereafter, all of them, the descendants of Vrishni and Bhoja, being permitted by the Brahmanas, partook the remnants of prasada and also drank liquor made of rice. By drinking, they all became delirious, and bereft of knowledge, they touched the cores of each other's hearts with harsh words. As by the friction of bamboos, destruction takes place, so also at sunset, by the interaction of the faults of intoxication, all their minds became unbalanced and destruction took place. And that's, okay, unquote, right? This is from the fourth chapter. And after overseeing, right, the end of the dynasty and finishing sending all the demigods back to their posts, the Lord went to the bank of the Sarasvati and sat down underneath a tree. And Uddhava followed him, and soon he was joined by Maitreya. So these two great devotees, they were chosen by the Lord to receive his last instructions. And now we have the next topic here. The Lord instructs Uddhava and Maitreya. So, speaking to Uddhava, the Lord remembered how in the past, at the beginning of the current day of Brahma, he had spoken the 4 original verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, right, to him, to Brahma. And this we studied in the second canto, right? This is the verse. O Uddhava, in the lotus millennium, in the days of yore, at the beginning of the creation, I spoke unto Brahma, who is situated on the lotus that grows out of my navel, about my transcendental glories, which the great sages describe as Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So the Lord described this to Uddhava, how he spoke to Brahma at the beginning of creation, at the beginning of the current day, right? As we studied already in the second canto. So Uddhava then he asked the Lord to describe the transcendental knowledge to him and Maitreya, right? To describe this transcendental spiritual knowledge that the Lord was speaking to Brahma. And this led the Lord to speak the Uddhava Gita. And this Uddhava Gita is included in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Like soon no, like maybe in 1 year or more than 1 year, we will study this 11th canto, right? One day we will study it. Probably not so long in the future, but it will take some time. We are still in the third canto, right? To the 11th canto is a little bit far. And then there is another verse here. That's verse 18. Quote, "My Lord, kindly explain to us, if you think us competent to receive it, that transcendental knowledge which gives enlightenment about yourself and which you explained before to Brahmaji." Right? That's verse 18. Unquote. So Uddhava received from the Lord the mission to stay on the planet, right, after his disappearance, to share this knowledge with great sages who were living with Naranarayana Rishi in Badarikashrama. And this encounter between Uddhava and Vidura and Uddhava, it happened when he was en route to the Himalayas to fulfill his mission. So this was a little after maybe a few days after Krishna left the planet, right? Then he was walking, he was going to Badarikashrama. On the way, he met Uddhava, right? He spoke, Uddhava met Vidura. He spoke quickly with him, spoke a little bit about the pastimes of the Lord. And Vidura, he was very anxious to be instructed in transcendental knowledge by Uddhava, right? But Uddhava directed Vidura to Maitreya, who was nearby. And because Maitreya also had been instructed directly by the Lord. So although Uddhava is a pure devotee, Maitreya was senior in age. And Uddhava he wanted to follow, right, the general etiquette of not instructing others in the presence of a superior. So, but in a higher sense, however, this all happened under the inspiration of the Lord, right? He wanted Maitreya to share his knowledge with Vidura, and he wanted Uddhava to continue his path to the Himalayas to fulfill his mission there. So that's one important point to understand. When we speak about pure devotee, everything that they do is actually inspired by the Lord. In the case of conditioned souls, like not always, right? Not always conditioned soul listen to the Lord or is under the control of the Lord. But when we speak with pure devotees, they're completely dovetailed with the Lord. So all their actions are inspired by the Lord, right? There is no separation. So Sukadeva Goswami, he ends the description of this passage with this verse, quote, "O king, after thus discussing with Vidura the transcendental name, fame, qualities, etc., on the banks of the Yamuna, Uddhava was overwhelmed with great affliction. He passed the night as if it were a moment, and thereafter he went away." And that's Srimad Bhagavatam 3:4-27. And then he revealed the mystery of the disappearance of the Yadus, right? That's verse 29, quote, "My dear king, the cursing of the Brahmanas was only a plea, was only an excuse, but the actual fact was the supreme desire of the Lord. He wanted to disappear from the face of the earth after dispatching his excessive numerous family members, right? Unquote. So Uddhava, he stayed because he was so qualified that the Lord wanted him to stay as his representative, right? So the Lord says here, quote, "Now I shall leave the vision of this mundane world, and I see that Uddhava, the foremost of my devotees, is the only one who can be directly entrusted with knowledge about me. Uddhava is not inferior to me in any way because he is never affected by the modes of material nature. Therefore, he may remain in this world in order to disseminate specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. That's the Lord himself speaking, verses 30 and 31 of the 4th chapter. And now we go to Vidura meets Maitreya, right? So now Vidura leaves Uddhava. Uddhava continues his path to Badalikashrama. And now Vidura will speak with Maitreya. So Vidura met Maitreya at the bank of the Ganges in Haridwar, right? A little bit to the north from where he met with Uddhava. And he asked the sage several questions. So first question, how does the Lord accept different incarnations, right? And how does he create the cosmic manifestation in such an organized way? Because only a fool says that everything happens by chance, right? Chance means I don't know. That's all. An intelligent person, he tries to understand the reason of things because he understands there must be a reason, right? So that's the question of Uddhava, one of the questions of Vidura. Then the second question. So the Lord, he creates the element ether, right? Sky. Sometimes it's translated as ether, sometimes it's translated as sky. The Sanskrit word is akash. So the Lord creates this ether or sky, which is the fabric of material creation, and he places the whole creation on it, right? And then he expands himself into all the living entities who appear in different species of life. So the question is, how does the Lord maintain them, and how he can be simultaneously one and different from all these different living entities, right? And then see, what are the auspicious characteristics of the Lord in his different incarnations? Then number 4, how did the Lord create the different planets as well as the different kings and others who rule them? And number 5, how did the Lord create the natures, activities, forms, features, and names of the different living entities? So these 5 questions are the central topics of this conversation between Vidura and Maitreya that will go on until the end of the 4th canto, right? So these 2 cantos, cantos 3 and 4, they will answer all these different questions and also go to other topics. That's why these 2 cantos, they go very deep into this topic of the creation of the universe. So many details are given. It's very interesting. So Vidura then, he reveals that during his pilgrimage, right, he had already heard the Mahabharata from Vyasadeva, right, his father, and he was now interested in directly hearing about the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Because as a pure devotee, he understood that the real purpose of the Mahabharata is to conduct people to the teachings of the Lord, right, present in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. And he laments, like, for the unfortunate people who are interested just in philosophical speculation, theoretical knowledge, rituals, right? So he laments for these people. So Maitreya, he starts his answer by describing the beginnings of the creation to Vidura. So all the discussion about the creation that we studied in the 2nd canto is centered around the primary creation, right? The creation of the subtle components of the universe that is performed by the Lord and that form the Virat Rupa, right? We studied this. This is our primary creation. Now, in the 3rd canto, we will study the creation of the material universe, like the gross creation of the material universes. And this starts with the creation of the material elements, right? This is done by the Lord. And then there is this is still part of the primary creation, but we are, coming to the end of the primary creation. And then we will study the secondary creation, that is the creation performed by Lord Brahma, right? After the universes are created, after Brahma appears there from the lotus flower and so on, how exactly did he create the universe? And this includes the creation of the different planetary systems, the process of population of the universe, the reign of the Manus, and so on, as well as the different incarnations of the Lord that appear in his current day. So the answers of Maitreya, they start on verse 18, right? So as the etiquette, he starts by congratulating Vidura, glorifying him. Like so, I will read a few verses here with this glorification. These are fifth chapter, verses 18 to 22. Quote, Sri Maitreya said, O Vidura, all glory unto you. You have inquired from me of the greatest of all goodness, and thus you have shown your mercy, both to the world and to me, because your mind is always absorbed in thoughts of the transcendence. O Vidura, it is not at all wonderful that you have so accepted the Lord without deviation of thought, for you were born from the semen of Vyasadeva. I know that you are now Vidura due to the course of to the cursing of Mandavya Muni, and that formerly you were King Yamaraj, the great controller of living entities after their deaths. You were begotten by the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, in the kept wife of his brother. Your good self is one of the eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for whose sake the Word, while going back to his abode, he left instructions with me. So interesting. Maitreya, he reveals that actually the Lord spoke these instructions to him specifically because he wanted to pass these instructions to Vidura. So just like he instructed Uddhava because he wanted to pass this message to the sages in Badarikashrama, he instructed Maitreya because he wanted these instructions to be passed to Vidura. So I shall therefore describe to you the pastimes by which the personality of Godhead extends his transcendental potency for the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic world, as well as they occur one after the other, right? Unquote. So it's revealed here that Vidura is no one else but Yamaraj, like the upholder of the religious principles. So just like in the case of Parikshit Maharaj and Sukadeva Goswami, this is an extremely high level philosophical discussion between two pure devotees of the Lord, right? Jai. And then we have the main topic for today, that is the creation of the material elements. And this is chapter 3.5. So, Maitreya, he starts his narration by giving an explanation of the 4 original verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? We already studied these 4 verses. I think you even memorized these verses probably. But anyway, he mentions this verse. He gives a quick explanation. So the line, Hans Evasan Eva Gre, right, is the first line of the first verse. It is frequently misinterpreted by Mayavadis and mental speculators who don't want to accept the supremacy of the Lord. So they interpret it in different ways. But the real meaning is that before the creation of the material universe, when there were no material elements, no universes, no planets, and no Purusha incarnation, only the Lord existed as Mahavishnu, right? So that's the meaning of this verse. So then, quote, these are verses 23 and 24. Quote, the personality of Godhead, the master of all living entities, existed prior to the creation of the creation as one without a second. It is by his will only that creation is made possible, and again, everything merges in him. This supreme self is symptomized by different names. The Lord, the undisputed proprietor of everything, was the only seer. The cosmic manifestation was not present at that time, and thus he felt imperfect, without his plenary and separated parts and parcels. The material energy was dormant, whereas the internal potency was manifested, right? Unquote. So, it's very important that this passage, it should not be misinterpreted. We should not think that, literally nothing existed at this point apart from the Lord, that the Lord was, alone in the darkness or something like that. Because the spiritual planets, with all the eternal associates of the Lord, his spiritual potencies, they are always active. They are always there. They're just, eternal, without interruption, without the beginning, without end. And the verse makes it clear by stating that the internal potency was manifested. So the spiritual words were there, right? They are always there. This speaks only about the material creation. So when the scriptures, they describe a situation when only the Lord existed, right? They are describing the situation connected with the material creation prior to the appearance of Brahma. They are describing this time when the material creation is withdrawn and Mahavishnu is alone, sleeping there on the causal ocean. So at this point, only Mahavishnu existed, right? There was no Brahma, nothing. So the material potency was also inactive, and now the souls, they were sleeping in the body of the Lord, right? And in this situation, the Lord desired to again give names and forms to his parts and parcels. So again, he decided to create the material manifestation and give again the opportunity for the souls to practice devotional service and return back to Godhead, right? We think that here is, vacation, that okay, now it's time for enjoyment, but no, actually the material world is created with this purpose of giving us a chance of going back to Godhead. This chance lasts for 311 trillion years. The Lord is very patient. If we don't use the opportunity, then we go back to sleep inside the body of Mahavishnu again, right? Wait for the next opportunity. So the material creation is eternal in the sense that it goes through unlimited cycles of creation and destruction, right? So it's eternal in this sense, but it's not active, right? So it's eternal in the sense that it's going on continuously, but it's not eternal in the sense that is not always active. It's created and destroyed, created and destroyed. So after each day of Brahma, which are 4.32 billion years, there is a partial destruction, right? And then this is followed by the night of Brahma, which are also 4.2 billion years. And then at the end of the life of Brahma, which are 311.04 trillion years, we already learned how to do these calculations, right? Now you can do everything by head. You don't need me to tell. There is this period when the material nature remains inactive. Same period, 311.04 trillion years. And in this way, the material creation, it actually remains active less than 25% of the time, right? Because half of the time that Brahma is alive, and then half again, including the time that the universe is inside Lord Mahavishnu. So less than 25% of the time, material creation is active. And then, considering that we spend about one third of our time sleeping, right, and yet more time in unconscious state when we are transmigrating from one body to the other, and so we have quite little time to perform activities, actually, right? And even this time that we spend performing activities, most of the time we spend in different animal bodies, bodies of plants and so on. So actually, most of the time we spend in some kind of level of total or partial unconsciousness, right? So our existence in this material world, it can thus be described as very long periods of unconsciousness with short periods of activities in between, right? And even when we consider these periods of activities, we are not always in a human body, not always in situations where we fully understand what we are doing. Sometimes we're just, we don't know what is happening, tamaguna. So actually, the time that we are active and in full consciousness is actually not much. So in comparison, the inhabitants of the spiritual world, they are always fully conscious. They are fully active in their service to the Lord. So life in the spiritual world is thus reality, right? And life in the material world is more like a sleeping state with short periods of partial consciousness, right? While we are in a body performing material activities, we are not sleeping, and so on. So somehow we got into this situation, and now we have the opportunity of going back, right? Jai. That's why we are here studying Srimad Bhagavatam. And then the next three verses, they describe the beginning of the process of creation. So, quote, the Lord is the seer, and the external energy, which is seen, works as both cause and effect in the cosmic creation. O greatly fortunate Vidura, this external energy is known as Maya or illusion, and through her agency only is the entire material manifestation made possible. The Supreme Living Being, in his feature as a transcendental Purusha incarnation, who is the Lord's plenary expansion, impregnates the material nature of the three modes, and thus, by the influence of eternal time, the living entities appear. Thereafter, influenced by the interactions of eternal time, the supreme son of matter, called Mahatattva, became manifested. And in this Mahatattva, the unalloyed goodness, the Supreme Lord, sowed the seeds of universal manifestation out of his own body. And these are verses 25 to 27. Okay, if you understood, congratulations. If you didn't understand, don't worry, it's normal. It's a little complicated, but we will try to explain now. Okay, so starting from the beginning. Most atheistic philosophies, they believe that the universe is created automatically by the interaction of different material elements, right? But this verse explains that the material energy is just the effect, right? There is cause and effect, right? The material energy is the effect. The cause is the Supreme Lord, right? He's the one doing things. It's just like a pile of bricks, right? A pile of bricks, it doesn't organize itself into a building, right? Only a fool will think like that. The bricks, they become a building when someone builds it, right? So the same way, the material energy, it can't move with the transcendental touch of the Lord, right? Jai. Okay, so next point. Continue. So how does the transcendental Lord activate the spiritual energy? Like how does it work? So no extenuating effort is necessary. Everything is done by just a simple glance, right? By the glance of Mahavishnu, the material energy is impregnated by all the souls who desire to participate in the material creation. And they are accompanied by Lord Sadashiva and also the time energy, right? So these three components, they go together on this look of Mahavishnu. And the time energy agitates the material energy. It puts it into movement, and it leads to the manifestation of the Mahatattva, right? Remember, when it's an inactive, when it's just the energy, it's called Pradana. After it is agitated by the glance of the Lord, it's called Mahatattva. Mahatattva means the energy is active. Something is happening. And then at this point, the three modes of material nature, right? Goodness, passion, and ignorance, they become active, right? So just like a father impregnating a mother leads to the birth of a child, the Lord impregnating the material nature with the souls and the time energy, it leads to the appearance of all material universes and ultimately of all living entities, right? Jai. So the material energy is first manifested in the form of pradana, right? The gigantic mass of unmanifested material energy, and it appears like a cloud. It covers part of the spiritual sky. And after being impregnated by the time energy, then the three modes of material nature, they become apparent, right? Originally, they were present, but they were merged, dissolved into the mass of elements. When the time energy comes, they manifest, they start working. And from this point on, like I said, the pradana is converted into Mahatattva, and then the chain of transformation that leads to the creation of the material universes, it starts. And from the combination of the total material energy and the mode of ignorance, the false ego is generated. And this false ego is the basic force that binds the souls into the material universe, right? Making them accept different material identities, one after the other, right? I'm a man, I'm a woman, I don't know, a tree, and so on. And in his purport to 3528, Prabhupada, he explains this point, quote, the Mahatattva is the medium between pure spirit and material existence. It is the junction of matter and spirit, wherefrom the false ego of the living entity is generated. All living entities are differentiated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead. Under the pressure of false ego, the conditioned souls, although parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, claim to be enjoyers of material nature. This false ego is the binding force of material existence, right? That's what keeps us here in the material world. So the Lord again and again gives a chance to the bewildered, conditioned souls to get free from this false ego. And that is why the material creation takes place at intervals. He gives the conditioned souls all facilities for rectifying the activities of the false ego, but he does not interfere with their small independence as part and parcels of the Lord, like unquote. That's the end of Prabhupada's quote. So this verse explains that being touched by the glance of the Lord, the Mahatattva becomes itself an ansa or a partial expansion of the Lord. Right? So in this way, the Mahatattva becomes a sentient living being that consistently differentiates itself and gradually generates the different material manifestations and the different living entities. So by being touched by the glance of the Lord, the Mahatattva becomes alive. It's not just a mass of matter. It becomes alive, becomes a potency of the Lord. So, quote, the verse that explains this is 28. Thereafter, the Mahatattva differentiated itself into many different forms as the reservoir of the world-be entities. The Mahatattva is chiefly in the mode of ignorance and generates the false ego. It is a plenary expansion of the personality of Godhead with full consciousness of creative principles and time for fructification, right? Unquote. And then an attentive reader, right? If you are paying attention, you may have noticed that an attentive reader may notice an apparent contradiction between verses 27 and 28, because verse 27, it mentions unalloyed goodness, right? And then verse 28, it says that the Mahatattva is chiefly in the mode of ignorance, right? So what is that? Is unalloyed goodness or is ignorance? In reality, verse 27, it mentions that the Supreme Lord, who is the unalloyed goodness, the purest, inseminates the Mahatattva. So the unalloyed goodness is not the Mahatattva, is the Lord, right? The quality of the Mahatattva is the mode of ignorance, and that's what is described on verse 28. So only 28 describes the qualities of Mahatattva. Verse 27 describes the qualities of the Lord. And this quality of the mode of ignorance makes the soul forget his original spiritual position, enjoying the material creation. That's why Mahatattva is called in the mode of ignorance, because it has this property of making the soul forget. So the false ego means the concept of identity that makes us think that we are something other than our original spiritual nature. So our original nature is to be a servant of Krishna, right, Jai? But under the influence of the false ego, we think that we are a man, a woman, a demigod, a tree, a horse, right? Whatever. So under the influence of the false ego, we are prepared to accept any identity at all, except our original spiritual identity as a servant of Krishna. That's the magic of the false ego, right? Haribo, right? Congratulations. So false ego, it leads to executing material activities, right? Manipulating the material energy in the form of gross matter and also in dealing with other people, relationships. So these material activities, they have three phases: cause, effect, and the doer. The cause is material desire, right? We want to do things. The effect or consequence are the different karmic reactions that we get out of it, right? And under illusion, we see ourselves as the doers, right? We see ourselves as the ones who are doing all these things. In verse 29, it mentions these points. It says that, quote, Mahatattva, or the great causal truth, transforms into false ego, which is manifested in three phases: cause, effect, and the door. All such activities are on the mental plane and are based on the material elements, gross senses, and mental speculation. The false ego is represented in three different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Okay, unquote. So, originally, there were only five energies present, right, in the very beginning of creation. The Mahatattva, right, which is the sum of all material elements. The three modes of material nature, right, good, passion, and ignorance, this counts as three, and material time, right? Only five things existed. So by the interaction of these five, everything else was created. So first, the false ego was created by the combination of Mahatattva and the mode of ignorance, right? And then next, the mind is created by the further interaction of the false ego and the mode of goodness, right? The mind is the center of material experience, right? Because through the mind we through the mind we experience the world, right? We can feel, we can desire, right? And the creation of the mind is explained in verse 30. It says that the false ego is transformed into mind by interaction with the mode of goodness. All the demigods who control the phenomenal world are also products of the same principle, namely the interaction of false ego and the mode of goodness, right? Okay, and then we have the next slide here, continuing this explanation. So the interaction of the false ego and the mode of goodness, it also creates the different demigods who govern the cosmos, right? So the demigods created at this stage, however, are not the same demigods that we have in our universe, right? These demigods, they are created later. They're created as part of the creation of Brahma. Everything that happens in this chapter, in this fifth chapter, it happened in the very initial stages of creation, before the creation of the material universes, before the birth of Brahma, and so on. So these demigods mentioned here, they are archetypical demigods that are the source of all the different demigods that later appear inside the different material universes. Just like, for example, Lord Sadashiva, he is the origin of all the Lord Shivas that appear in the different universes. These demigods, they are the original demigods, gods that produce all the others later. And then, next, by the interaction of the false ego and the mode of passion, the senses are created, right? Allowing us to experience the world. Again, the senses are created at this stage. They are archetypical senses, right? And these archetypical senses, they will later give origin to the senses of every individual living being. One example that we can be given to help us to understand this point is that someone may invent a thing called a car, right? He has the idea, he makes the project, and then later some factory is built to produce these cars so people who are interested, they can buy them, right? So these two things, they not necessarily happen together. The car can be invented much before the factory is built, right? And the first cars are produced. So it's more or less like that. Krishna is inventing something called senses, and then later the living entities, they will, use the senses to enjoy the world. And then verse 31, it mentions that the senses, they are in turn used to perform material activities and mental speculation. And of course, mental speculation are also material activities. So in another part of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that the interaction of false ego and passion is also responsible for the creation of material intelligence, right? So this interaction, it creates these two things, the senses and the material intelligence. And this explains why this passage mentions the senses as being the means for performing both material activities and mental speculation. Because here in this explanation, the senses and the intelligence, they're just described together as just one thing, right? And in other parts of Srimad Bhagavatam, they are described separately, right? But, we can understand that the senses, they do the material activities and the intelligence takes care of the mental speculation, right? No problem. So verse 31, the senses are certainly products of the mode of passion in false ego, and therefore philosophical, speculative knowledge and fruitive activities are predominantly products of the mode of passion. Unquote. So, Srila Prabhupada explains how the false ego, mind, and senses, as well as the influence of the three modes of material nature, they lead to the performance of different material activities in his purport, right? He explains this point. So I'm going to quote here. So, quote, this is Prabhupada speaking. Those who are in the mode of goodness think that each and every person is God, and thus they laugh at the pure devotees who try to engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Those who are puffed up by the mode of passion try to lord it over material nature in various ways. Some of them engage in altruistic activities as if they were agents appointed to do the good to others by their mental speculative plans. Such men accept the standard ways of mundane altruism, but their plans are made on the basis of false ego. This false ego extends to the limit of becoming one with the Lord. The last class of egoistic conditioned souls, those in the mode of ignorance, are misguided by identification of the gross body with the self. Thus, all their activities are centered around the body only. All these persons are given the chance to play with false egoistic ideas, but at the same time, the Lord is kind enough to give them a chance to take help from scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, so they may understand the science of Krishna and thus make their lives successful. The entire material creation, therefore, is meant for the falsely egoistic living entities hovering on the mental plane under different illusions in the modes of material nature, right? Unquote. So, okay, so now I'm speaking again. So, we can see that the Lord creates the conditions for us to enjoy this material world by creating the false ego, the mind, the senses, etc. And at the same time, he creates the conditions for our liberation, right? By giving us the scriptures, sending his pure devotees to take birth in this world, to help us, conditioned souls to go back to Godhead and so on. So we come to this material world due to misusing our free will, like choosing to turn our back to Krishna, and we can return to our original eternal position by using our free will appropriately, right? We misused our free will, that's why we choose to come here. Now, if we use our free will appropriately, we can go back, right? If we choose to understand Krishna through the scriptures and by association with pure devotees, we can go back. And Prabhupada makes this point. He mentions that, quote, the best means of liberation from the clutches of false ego is to give up the habit of philosophical speculation regarding the absolute truth. One should know definitely that the absolute truth is never realized by the philosophical speculations of the imperfect, egoistic person. The absolute truth, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is realized by hearing about Him in all submission and love from a bona fide authority who is a representative of the 12 great authorities mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. By such an attempt only can one conquer the illusory energy of the Lord, although for others she is unsurpassable, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Right? So that's the end of the quote. So in this way, from the interaction of the false ego and goodness, the minds and the demigods, they are generated, right? From false ego and passion, the senses and also the material intelligence, they are created. And then the next stage is the creation of the material elements. And this starts with the creation of the element ether. And from ether, all other elements are created. And ether or sky, it is created from the interaction of false ego and ignorance, right? False ego and goodness creates the mind. False ego and passion creates the senses. False ego and ignorance creates ether. That is the first of the gross material elements. So false ego already appears from the interaction of Mahatattva and ignorance, right? And then when this combination combines again, mixes again with ignorance, then ether is created. So these successive combinations are similar to an artist creating new colors by mixing different colors present on his palette, and then mixing the new colors again with the previous colors to create yet new colors, right? It's something like that. It's, you mix and then you mix again and you mix again, and each time you create new colors. So in these verses, two different Sanskrit words are used to describe the element ether, right? These words are Kam and Naba. However, in his purports, Prabhupada mentions the word Akasha. And this makes clear that all these three words, they refer to the same thing. They're speaking about the element ether, right? It's just that Bhagavatam is using different words, but it is speaking about the same thing. And as explained in the Vedanta Sutra, the element ether or sky or Akash, wherever you want to call it, is a manifestation of the Lord. The element ether is the fabric of the material manifestation. It's the source of all other elements, and it serves as the foundation where the whole cosmic manifestation rests. When we study later in the third canto, when we study the teachings of Lord Kapila, he will explain more about the properties of the element ether. It's quite interesting. So the property of ether is to transmit sound, right? And therefore, ether and sound, they are created at the same stage, right? Sound is used to transmit Vedic knowledge. And this is another indicative of the importance of ether. So Prabhupada explains in his purport that the whole material creation is created from subtle to gross. Therefore, sound was created before the element ether, just like Taush is created before the element air, and so on. Okay, another quote, verse 32, quote, the sky is a product of sound, and sound is the transformation of egoistic ignorance. In other words, the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul, right? Unquote. And then we come to the next points here. This is a kind of long, detailed explanation, but I'm trying to make it, as clear as possible, because when you read just the verses, oh my God, what is this? It's difficult to understand. So I'm just trying to explain it as clearly as possible so you can really follow it and really appreciate, how interesting it actually is. And this is just the beginning, of course. There is the other further chapters in the third canto. We will study in more detail all the stages of the material creation. So the next stage was the creation of the element air, together with the Tausch sensation, right? These two things come together. We can't see air, but we can feel it, right? So, and the Vedas explain that we can feel different material objects due to a layer of subtle air that covers the skin, right? So apart from the nerves, there is this subtle component of the skin that helps us to feel things. So ether is created from mixing Mahatattva with ignorance, and then again ignorance, right? And then ether. And then Tausch is created from the mixture of ether with eternal time, and again Mahatattva, right? The total material energy. And the element air, it comes immediately after the creation of Tausch. And is described that this all happened due to the glance of the Lord. So, quote 33, verse 33, quote, thereafter the personality of Godhead glanced over the sky, partially mixed with eternal time and external energy, and thus developed the Tausch sensation, from which the air in the sky was produced. And this is 3.5.33. And unquote, right? So as Prabhupada explains in his purport, quote, all material creations take place from subtle to gross. The entire universe is developed in that manner. From the sky, develop the Tausch sensation, which is a mixture of eternal time and the external energy and the glance of the personality of Godhead. The Tausch sensation developed into the air in the sky. Similarly, all other gross matter also developed from subtle to gross. Sound developed into sky. Tausch developed into air. Form developed into fire. Taste developed into water. And smell developed into art. Unquote. Then, the next stage is the creation of the element fire, right? And in this narration, fire is mentioned by the Sanskrit word Jyoti. Jyoti means light. Literal translation, Jyoti is light. And Prabhupada translates the word Jyoti as electricity. And then you are, okay, fire, light, electricity, why so many different definitions? The point is that both light and electricity, they are considered subtle manifestations of the element fire. Therefore, the three are manifestations of the same material element, right? Electricity and light, they are also fire, according to Vedic definition. Therefore, they're the same thing. However, it seems that at the time of creation, there was no gross manifestation of fire, like there was nothing burning there. Just subtle, it was just subtle energy. Therefore, the element fire, it existed in a very subtle form. And that's probably why Prabhupada, he chose to use the word electricity, right, instead of light or fire. So, okay, Prabhupada translates as electricity. So electricity or light or fire, it comes after the appearance of form, which comes from a combination of ether, sky, and air, right? And so it's thanks to the creation of the element fire and its subtle forms as light and electricity that we can see the world, right? If there is no fire, no electricity, no light, then what we will see, right? So quote, that's verse 3.5.34. Thereafter, the extremely powerful air interacting with the sky generated the form of sense perception, and the perception of form transformed into electricity, the light to see the world, unquote. So it's described that this light or electricity surcharged the air, and by the glance of the Lord, this air surcharged with electricity was again combined with time and Mahatattva, and this led to the creation of water, together with taste. And this water was again glanced by the Lord, and again combined with time and Mahatattva, and this led to the creation of the element art, together with smell. And that is There are three verses describing this process. These are 35 to 37. Quote, when electricity was surcharged with the air and was glanced over by the Supreme, at that time, by a mixture of eternal time and external energy, there occurred the creation of water and taste. Thereafter, the water produced from electricity was glanced over by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and mixed with eternal time and external energy. Thus, it was transformed into art, which is qualified primarily by smell. O gentle one, of all the physical elements, beginning from the sky down to the earth, all the inferior and superior qualities are due only to the final touch of the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then Prabhupada explains this point in his purport, right? That's a kind of a little bit long quote here. So this is Prabhupada speaking, quote, from the descriptions of the physical elements in the above verse, it is clear that in all stages, the glance of the Supreme is needed in order with the other additions and alterations. In every transformation, the last finishing touch is the glance of the Lord, who acts as a painter does when he mixes different colors to transform them into a particular color. When one element mixes with another, the number of its qualities increases. For example, the sky is the cause of air. The sky has only one quality, namely sound. But by the interaction of the sky with the glance of the Lord, mixed with eternal time and the external nature, the air is produced, which has two qualities, sound and touch. Similarly, after the air is created, the interaction of sky and air, touched by time, the external energy of the Lord, produces electricity. Next, the interaction of electricity with air and sky, mixed with time, the external energy, and the Lord's glance over them produces water. In the final stage of sky, there is one quality, namely sound. In the air, two qualities, sound and touch. In the electricity, three qualities, namely sound, touch, and form. In the water, four qualities, sound, touch, form, and taste. And in the last stage of physical development, the result is art, which has all five qualities, sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Although they are different mixture of different materials, such mixtures do not take place automatically. Just as a mixture of colors does not take place automatically without the touch of the living painter. The automatic system is factually activated by the glancing touch of the Lord. The conclusion is that the physical elements may work very wonderfully to the layman's eyes, but their workings actually take place under the supervision of the Lord. Those who can mark only the changes of the physical elements and cannot perceive the hidden hands of the Lord behind them are certainly less intelligent persons, although they may advertised as great material scientists, right? Haribol. So this is the explanation of Prabhupada. And now, one interesting point here. How does this explanation of the Srimad Bhagavatam that we just studied relate to modern theories, right? So let's explore this idea, if there is anything in common at all. So nowadays, the most accepted scientific theory for the origin of the universe is the Big Bang theory, right? And the idea is that a great explosion, like the Big Bang, it led to a rapid expansion of the fundamental material particles, which created the physical laws that govern the cosmos, and also a mass of energy that gradually expanded and cooled down, leading to the creation of hydrogen, which condensed in the first stars, like leading to the gradual combination of the other atomic elements by nuclear fusion inside the stars. And these atomic elements then spread through the cosmos as these first stars exhausted their fuel and exploded into supernovas, right? That's a scientific theory. So some believe that this passage of the Srimad Bhagavatam connects well with this scientific description of the initial stages of the universe, because there is this no. Because that in the Bhagavatam is explained, right? There is this sequential creation of the fabric of space-time, like ether, then followed by the expansion of matter, air, which was in turn surcharged with life and energy, like fire, and this led to the creation of hydrogen, water, and finally the other atomic elements, art, by this process of nuclear fusion inside the stars. So you see that if we are a little bit creative, we can connect, right, the creation of the elements that is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam with the stages of the scientific theory, right? So the ones who have this idea, they believe that after this, there was the appearance of Brahma, who used these elements to create the sun, the planets, and the different forms of life. So whether this is correct or not, we can't tell, right? But it's an interesting idea, right? It makes a little bit of sense. There are indeed certain similarities between these two explanations, right? The Big Bang Theory and the creation of the material elements that is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this can be used to explain, the version of the Srimad Bhagavatam to scientifically inclined people. So that is something useful on that. And it's interesting to note that the explanations given in the Srimad Bhagavatam and other Puranas, they also closely relate to modern scientific theories in other factors. For example, the dates of creation of both the universe and the solar system, dates for the main cycle of extinctions in your planet, such as the Permian, Triassic extinction, and so on. We will see this later during the course. The dates for that Bhagavatam gives for all these three, they are less than 1% different than the dates that modern studies they give. So this is quite amazing, right? How Srimad Bhagavatam can give it practically exactly the same dates. And also the Puranas, they agree on the idea of the sun becoming in the future a red giant and destroying the planets of the inner solar system, right, including the Earth. So according to the Puranas, this is supposed to happen at the end of the day of Brahma, right, in a time frame that matches actually what is believed by the scientists. So science is based on making experiments and creating theories based on the results. So in the Vedic tradition, these two processes are called pratyaksha and anumana. They are not considered very perfect forms of obtaining knowledge because they are based on using our material senses and intelligence, which are imperfect. But despite the imperfection, they are still accepted as forms of obtaining knowledge. And sometimes, the conclusions achieved by these methods may not be completely incorrect, right? So sometimes, science may give us explanations that may be at least partially true, sometimes. The Vedas explain that the most perfect form of obtaining knowledge, according to the Vedas, is Sabda Pramana, right? Receiving perfect knowledge from the scriptures, right? Trying to understand the explanations about the origin of the universe and other topics that are given in the Srimad Bhagavatam and other books, right? And that's what we are trying to do here. So the point about following the process of Sabda Pramana is that we need to study the explanations of the scriptures very carefully so we may properly understand them. Otherwise, we may start to just, fanatically try to push, theories that are just fruit of our misunderstanding and that are not at all, supported in the Shastra or in the purports of Prabhupada, right? So that's also a risk. So the fact that some scientific theories, they agree with the Vedas on some points, they reinforce the validity of the scriptures, right? And also it makes the points that some scientific theories, they may not be completely incorrect. They may be partially correct, right? So maybe in the future, the knowledge from the Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures, they may lead to correct scientific theories, right? Maybe some very intelligent devotee in the future, he may use this knowledge of the Bhagavatam to correct all these different, scientific theories, and thus come to unified theories that are supported by both the Vedas and experimental knowledge. And this will prove with beyond doubt the authenticity of the knowledge of the Vedas, and it would, of course, represent a great success for our movement, right? And that's perhaps that was perhaps Prabhupada's idea in constructing the temple of the Vedic planetarium. Maybe this will happen in the future, right? So now we come to the last topic for today. That is so this is the next slide here that I forgot, these last points that I explained. And now we come to the last point for today, that are the prayers by the predominating deities of the elements. This is the end of the 5th chapter. So concluding the 5th chapter, there are prayers of the predominating deities of the elements to Lord Mahavishnu. Because everything in the Lord's creation is personal, right? Just like the material energy itself is personified in the form of Parvati, all the material elements and different material energies of the Lord, they have their predominating deities, right? So at this point, the material elements, they were already manifested, right? Including the Mahatattva, the false ego, ether, air, fire, water, and art, and all the functions of sound, touch, form, taste, smell, together with their respective deities. But because the material creation was not yet active, they were not able to perform their functions, and thus they started praying to the Lord. Help us to perform, so we can perform our service, right? So, quote, the controlling deities of all the above-mentioned physical elements are empowered expansions of Lord Vishnu. They are embodied by eternal time under the external energy, and they are his parts and parcels. Because they were entrusted with different functions of universal duties and were unable to perform them, they offered fascinating prayers to the Lord as follows. So the prayers, they go from verse 39 to 51. This go all the way to the end of the chapter. So I'm not going to repeat all the prayers. I'm just going to make the main points here. So first point is that the Lord is the supreme shelter for everyone, right? So by taking shelter in the lotus feet of the Lord, we can become free from all material miseries and anxieties. So on the other hand, without taking shelter of the Lord, one will continue to be affected by these miseries, right? There is no solution. Even if he's occupied in the cultivation of knowledge and other spiritual activities. And then number B, living entities in this material world who are harassed by the 3 types of miseries, they can find relief from these miseries by taking shelter in the Lord. And by the simple process of taking shelter of the Lord, one can become happy and peaceful, and even while still living this material world, right? So surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord is not dependent on first cultivating knowledge or performing fruitive activities. It can immediately give relief to anyone without any prerequisite, right? It doesn't depend on anything. Then C, the lotus feet of the Lord are the shelter of all places of pilgrimage, and therefore great sages, carried by the knowledge of the Vedas, they take shelter on them, understanding that they can deliver us from all sinful reactions, right? And then D, meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord, one automatically develops knowledge, right? And from this knowledge arises detachment. And this detachment, in turn, makes one feel satisfied, right? On the other hand, without surrendering to the Lord, one remains attached to matter, and especially to sex life, which keeps him under the miseries of material world. right? So there are the two sides, like positive and negative. And then, okay, that's the last slide for today. E. The Lord appears in many incarnations for the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the universe. The Lord appears to protect the devotees and destroy the atheists, as well as to maintain the principles of religion. But in reality, the main reason for the Lord's coming is to give association to his devotees who are living in the material universes and who are anxious for his for his association, right? So the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord gives us remembrance of these pastimes and gives us courage. And then F, people who are attached to their material bodies, as well as the bodies of relatives and so on, thinking in terms of I and mine, they are unable to see the lotus feet of the Lord, even though the Lord is present in their hearts as Paramatma. However, they can change by hearing the glories of the Lord and chanting his holy names, right? Jai. And then G, materialistic and offensive persons, they can't see the lotus feet of the Lord, right? And similarly, they are also not able to recognize pure devotees of the Lord who are roaming on the planet. However, such materialistic persons can be saved when they somehow or other receive the causeless mercy of these pure devotees. Just like, for example, the hunter Mrigari, no, he got the mercy, right, from Narada Muni, or Nala Kuvara and Manigriva, right? The graded sons of Kuvera also got the mercy, right? So even a degraded person can be saved if he meets a pure devotee. And then 8, Gyanis, impersonalists, and yogis, they can also attain the Lord in his impersonal aspect, right? They can go to the Brahmajyoti, right, by dint of their austerities, cultivation of knowledge, and so on. However, the path for them is very difficult and their practice is very painful, right? Devotees, on the other hand, they can attain a much higher perfection by simply serving the Lord, right? Without having to experience, this pain, right? So the difference is that impersonalists, they try to attain the Lord by their own efforts, and devotees, they depend on the mercy of the Lord, right? That's the difference. This makes all the difference. And then E, although created by the Lord to create, the material world, the demigods of the elements, they admit that they are not able to cooperate and perform this creation by themselves. So then they ask the Lord to give them perfect knowledge so they can serve the Lord by being engaged in the different stages of material creation, right? So this is my main topics of these prayers. So in his purport, Prabhupada, he draws a parallel between their prayers and our own situation. He explains that we need empowerment to be able to serve the Lord. And this empowerment is obtained by trying to serve the Lord under the guidance of a qualified spiritual master. So his quote, one cannot do anything unless he is enlightened and empowered by the Lord. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Vatai smriti jnana apohanancha. Our recollections, knowledge, etc., as well as forgetfulness, are engineered by the Lord, who is sitting within the heart of everyone. The intelligent man seeks the help of the Lord, and the Lord helps the sincere devotees engaged in his multifarious services. So the demigods are entrusted by the Lord to create different species of living entities according to their past deeds. They are heading, asking the favor of the Lord for the intelligence and power to carry out their task. Similarly, any conditioned soul may also engage in the service of the Lord under the guidance of an expert spiritual master and thus gradually become freed from the entanglement of material existence. The spiritual master is the manifested representative of the Lord, and anyone who puts himself under the guidance of a spiritual master and acts accordingly is said to be acting in terms of Buddhi Yoga, as explained in the Bhagavad Gita 241. So That's the quote of Prabhupada. So this is it for today. And then in the next chapter, the sixth chapter, we will see how the Lord reacted to these prayers by the elements by creating the universal form and then progressing into the subsequent stages of material creation. So the next few chapters we will continue seeing in details about this process of creation described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, creation of time and so many things. It's quite interesting. Okay, so thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glórias de Srila Prabhupada. Haribo.